Today we are talking about anaerobic respiration. This is the type of respiration that organisms will go through when oxygen is not present in the cells. So the question we're trying to answer today is, how do organisms generate energy when there is not enough oxygen available to the cells? And there's a couple of ways to do this, but without oxygen, all cells will go through some type of fermentation process to produce ATP from the food molecules that they eat. Fermentation itself is a process by which energy can be released from food molecules without oxygen being present. And fermentation is going to occur in the cytoplasm. Fermentation always begins with glycolysis. And remember, in glycolysis, we're taking our sugar molecule or our glucose molecule and we're producing two pyruvic acid molecules. During this process, we're making two ATP molecules. This is all of the energy that will be produced during anaerobic respiration. Remember also that we have these hydrogen carriers. We're breaking off a couple of hydrogens from the glucose molecule as well, making NADH, which during aerobic respiration we were using in the electron transport chain. But now that oxygen is not present, we can't use NADH, so we'll go through either alcoholic fermentation or lactic acid fermentation. In alcoholic fermentation, yeast and some other microorganisms will go through this process, which produces ethyl alcohol and carbon dioxide. When we look at it in terms of a chemical equation, we take pyruvic acid, which is our product at the end of glycolysis, and take the NADH, which we made during glycolysis, and we will produce an alcohol, carbon dioxide, and an NAD+, which is then going to cycle back around so that we can continue going through glycolysis. Here are our two carbon dioxide molecules that are coming off, and our ethyl alcohol. These microorganisms are used by humans all the time. We use alcoholic fermentation when we're making alcoholic beverages and when we're trying to make bread. When you look at bread, you use yeast to make the bread rise. And that rising is due to carbon dioxide being released, and that's what creates the little holes or the little cells within bread. The other type of fermentation is lactic acid fermentation, and most organisms go through this type of fermentation. And basically we're taking pyruvic acid and changing it over into lactic acid. The difference here is that pyruvic acid is poisonous to cells, and so cells have to get rid of that pyruvic acid, but there's no way to break it down. So what we do is we take the pyruvic acid and the NADH that was produced during glycolysis, and from that we can get lactic acid and NAD+. And that NAD+ will then cycle back around so that glycolysis can happen again and we can make more ATP. This type of ATP is generally produced when we start off an exercise, something like a sprint or weightlifting, and this lactic acid will build up in our muscles, and that's what causes the soreness within our muscles. So that's a look at lactic acid fermentation and alcoholic fermentation, and explains to you why we need a different pathway other than aerobic respiration in order to produce energy. Sometimes there won't be enough energy or enough oxygen to go all the way through aerobic respiration and get us through the Krebs cycle and electron transport chain. Make sure you answer all the questions as best you can, and we'll see everybody in class.